I guess if Sarah Michelle Gellar has to marry someone that's not me, she could do worse than Freddie Prinze Jr., but I'm still a little sore about that, so... Hey geeks, welcome to my channel. I'm Trey Guillotine, and today I'm talking about a reboot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it around so others can join in the conversation. Let's geek out. Some of the exciting news that came out of Comic-Con San Diego just a couple weeks ago was actually a really big surprise, and a very pleasant surprise. Fox and Joss Whedon are working on, or rather getting in development. It hasn't started production yet. I don't even think there's casting yet. But it is something that they are in development of, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot. There are very little details about this aside from just the announcement that it is happening. Fox is going to be producing it. Joss Whedon is attached to it in some capacity. He's not going to be the showrunner, but he's probably going to be an executive producer or at least a consulting producer on the show. So he is attached to it. He is going to be working on it, but he's not going to be the showrunner. The showrunner is actually going to be a woman by the name of Monica Owusu-Breen. Some of the very minor, not minor details, but some of the very, there were like not even a handful of details that came out about this reboot, aside from the fact of Fox and Joss Whedon are going to be producing it, the showrunner is Monica Owusu-Breen, and the fact that as is going to be a reboot, the new title character, or whoever the Slayer is going to be, whether it's going to be Buffy or not, will be a black woman. So of course there are a number of people who were raging against this for very ignorant reasons, and then I'm sure there are some fans who have some actual concerns about the idea of rebooting Buffy, because it is kind of a staple of, I think, the millennial generation. It's a show that I grew up watching. I loved it. I have to admit, Sarah Michelle Gellar was my first celebrity crush, which is why I have such kind of a love-hate relationship for Freddie Prinze Jr. Like, I think he's a decent actor. I think he's an even better voice actor, but he also married Sarah Michelle Gellar. So, you know, I guess if Sarah Michelle Gellar has to marry someone that's not me, she could do worse than Freddie Prinze Jr., but I'm still a little sore about that. So some fans were concerned about this, and Monica Owusu-Breen wanted to assure fans that the reboot is in safe hands, and she posted on Twitter saying, "For some genre writers, it's Star Wars. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is my Star Wars. Before I became a writer, I was a fan. For 7 seasons, I watched Buffy Summers grow up, find love, kill that love. I watched her fight and struggle and slay. There is only one Buffy. One Xander, one Willow, Giles, Cordelia, Oz, Tara, Kendra, Faith, Spike, Angel. They can't be replaced. Joss Whedon's brilliant and beautiful series can't be replicated. I wouldn't try to. But here we are, 20 years later, and the world seems a lot scarier. So maybe it would be time to meet a new Slayer, and that's all I can say." And she's right. 20 years, just the fact that that show's over 20 years old at this point makes me feel really old. But it sounds like she's definitely, this isn't something she's taking lightly. She's definitely going into this with respect to the past series. So calling it a reboot might not actually be completely accurate, as a reboot would be rebooting the story of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of rebooting Buffy, and like they said, Xander and Willow and Giles and Angel, rebooting all of these characters. But that doesn't seem like that's what she's going to be doing with a new series. So if it's not going to be a reboot of Buffy Summers' story and life story in Sunnydale, then what exactly is this show going to be? And I think there are a couple of possibilities. So we know that it's not a reboot of Buffy Summers and the Scooby Gang in Sunnydale. It's not a reboot of that story or those characters, but it could still potentially be a reboot, as in taking a new story of a new Slayer and completely recreating the universe of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel without harking back to the already established canon of the previous series. This could be just a brand new series about a vampire slayer, and it not have anything to do with the past lore. Another possibility is that this could be a continuation of Buffy the Vampire Slayer as it was. We do know that it's going to be set in modern day, so I'm wondering if you don't know, and spoiler alert, this ending has been over 20 years old. It's over 20 years old, so it's not really that big of a spoiler. At the end of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the idea of having one Slayer every generation, and when that Slayer dies, a new Slayer is called, which I think was just a very inefficient way to have vampire Slayers who are going to combat all of the evil all over the world, but it's going to be one girl. Like, she can't be all over the world. Like, Buffy couldn't be everywhere. She was just fighting evil in Sunnydale. So what about the other places that could have used a Slayer, like Los Angeles? Fortunately, Los Angeles had Angel and his team, but everywhere else was just shit out of luck. Buffy was only in Sunnydale. But anyway, it tosses the idea of having one Slayer, and instead, through magic, they basically, at the end of the series, create, or rather give the Slayer powers to all of the potential Slayers at the end of the series, which season 7, a big part of that was gathering potential Slayers who had the chance of being called. So they gather them up, and then at the end of the series, when they're fighting the big bad, they basically give the power of the Slayer to all of the potential Slayers, both in their little group and then across the world, which was a really strong moment for the series. And I thought the way they did it was really inspiring, and it definitely opens up the lore of Buffy the Vampire Slayer for us to see new Slayers. So it's very possible that this reboot could actually be a continuation of that, where we're seeing a Slayer, where we're seeing one of those Slayers, one of those potential Slayers who was called at the end of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and is now acting as a Slayer wherever it is that she is. I think this would be really cool, but if they did that, it would kind of go against, or it could work in tandem with, the comics that continued Buffy the Vampire Slayer that Joss Whedon did. After the ending of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, he went forward with Buffy's story in the comics, which I only read a few of the early ones, and I didn't really like it. Personally, I think Joss Whedon's best work is when he is working with restrictions, where he has to figure out the best way to tell this story with the least amount of space, or the least amount of production budget. Like, you know, looking at things like Firefly and Serenity, like, I feel like that's where Joss Whedon works best, when he's restrained a little bit, because when he just goes off and does whatever it is he wants, I'm not in love with it. Like he did with the comics, I wasn't in love with the comics. But if this new reboot is a continuation, it's very possible that it could either retcon any of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer comics or any of the Angel comics, because they also continued the Angel series after the end of season 5 in comic form. Those I have not written, but they sounded really cool. So it could continue some of the stories that we see in the comics, or again, it could just be a new Slayer completely removed from the events, or not removed, but not involved with the events that happen after Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 7. So it could be one of those new potential Slayers that was called after the end of Buffy. That's just two possibilities. The third one, and I don't think it's going to be this way, because it has been said that this show will be set in modern times. But there is, I'm sure there's more than one, but there's one that we know for sure of. There is a black woman Slayer that Spike killed in the 1960s or 1970s in New York, and and had a son, Robin, who is a character in Buffy the Vampire Slayer season 7. So I think it'd be cool if this reboot actually went back to like the 1960s and showed the story of this Slayer. I think her name was Nikki. Showed the story of this Slayer, which would be very different. It wouldn't be California. It wouldn't be Buffy Summers, a white woman in California, be a black woman in the 1960s in New York fighting vampires. That one of those vampires could very well be Spike. I think that would be a really cool idea, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen, just because they did say it is going to be taking place in modern day. Personally, I'm really excited about this reboot. We haven't had Buffy the Vampire Slayer for a long time, and I've actually been going back, and if you follow me on Instagram or any of my social media, you know I've been going back and watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel, just rewatching it and remembering why this show is so great and why I love it so much. It really is such a great show. And as much as I love Buffy, I do have to admit I like Angel a little bit more, because Buffy is very young adult. It's very one of the prominent themes throughout the entire series is balancing a normal life between fighting evil, and it is very young adult, whereas Angel it's not balancing normal life. It's straight up, we're fighting monsters, we're killing monsters, and that's straight up, and also does some interesting, and it builds on some of the themes from Buffy of the monsters aren't necessarily monsters, especially in Angel, where you have humans who are lawyers but are also evil because they're representing the evil monsters and they're letting the evil monsters do what they want, and while there are demons and monsters who are the good guys. So it definitely plays with that different preconception of what makes a monster and what makes a non-monster, or what good and evil. And that's why I kind of like Angel a lot more. And watching it, and I know this is going to be a bold statement for a lot of people, but I have to say it, rewatching it, I absolutely think Buffy and Angel are a lot better than Supernatural for one big reason, and it's that Buffy and Angel have a big cast. Buffy the Vampire Slayer has Buffy and all of the Scoobies. Angel has Angel and all of his Angel Investigations team. Whereas Supernatural, and because they have that big cast, there's a lot more potential for stories, there's a lot more potential for conflict between characters and interactions that we get to see, and of course romance, and how romance can affect the story, and then breaking that romance could affect these characters. Whereas with Supernatural, you have Sam and Dean, occasionally Castiel and Crowley, and that's really it. Like, yes, there are some regular characters that appear here and there, but for the most part, it's just Sam and Dean. And I think because of that, that's definitely one of the weaknesses of Supernatural, and is why I think Buffy and Angel are better in terms of shows that are, you know, fighting the supernatural, fighting monsters, fighting evil. So I know a lot of people are probably going to disagree with that, but I've always been a big Buffy fan. I was really into it in middle school and even through college, and it's one of those shows that really grows with you. Like, I got to season 4 before I went to college, and I couldn't really appreciate it. Once I was in college and rewatched it and watched season 4, I appreciated it a lot much more. So if you haven't seen Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I highly suggest you give it a watch. It's 7 seasons of Buffy and then 5 seasons of Angel, and I think you should watch them in tandem of each other so that you get like the full story of the Buffy universe. I'm real excited about this reboot, or whatever, or continuation, or retcon, whatever the actual term is going to be to describe this show. I am really excited for it. What do you think of the idea of a new Buffy the Vampire Slayer series, but without Buffy? Let me know in the comments, and follow me on all the internets. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and share it around so others can join the conversation. If you want your answer to be featured in an upcoming episode of What You Gaming On, make sure to tell me the game you're playing, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, and your answer will be featured in an upcoming episode of What You Gaming On. And if you want to read any of my video game or Marvel TV show or movie reviews, go to www.treyguillotine.com and subscribe to my channel to geek out some more. Thanks for watching, and have fun.